Focus on Headline. And let's take a look at what major issues are making the headlines today on Focus on Headline. For this, joining us in the studio today, we have our reporters in Kwon-soa and Chang-ana. Guys, welcome back.
Hello. And we're actually joined by another animal in here.
Not an animal, it's an insect. I just want to say, for our listeners, I know a lot of our listeners do tune into our program on our live YouTube feed. If any of us are waving our hands and stuff like that, there's been like a fruit fly
in
that's
here,
in the studio for like the past 3 weeks that we somehow can't catch and get rid of.
A fruit fly can live for 3 weeks?
I think you're talking about something else that... Is it a fruit fly that... Harusari? Is that fruit fly? Is that the same thing?
I don't know.
Isn't it the same thing?
I don't know. There's eggs or something like that. But there's been a fruit fly or something like that in this studio for like weeks now, and we can't get this out of their way. Anyways, let's start things off over at the National Assembly. We know that the rival parties have been really clashing over some of the contentious bills, whether it be on the special probe bill into Marine Corporal Che or First Lady Kim Gun-hee. However, there are certain bills that all sides can agree to. The National Assembly holding a plenary session on Thursday and passing 77 livelihood-related and non-controversial bills, including those addressing deepfake sexual exploitation and the extension of parental leave. Hannah, let's start us off with this passage of 77 bills. Tell us more about this.
Sure. Now, this is the first time the ruling and opposition parties have agreed to pass bills since the plenary session on the 28th of last month, when 28 livelihood-related bills, including the Nursing Act, the Special Law on Rental Fraud, and the Kuhara Act were passed about a month ago. Now, this is interpreted as a response to public criticism of the repetitive political strife, including the opposition party's forceful passage of controversial bills, the president's vetoes, and the National Assembly's revotes, leading to the rejection of bills. Now, to name a few, one of the bills passed at the plenary session includes an amendment to the Special Act on the Punishment of Sexual Violence Crimes, which imposes up to 3 years in prisons or a fine of up to 30 million won for those who possess or view deep-fake sexual exploitation materials. Additionally, an amendment to the Act on the Protection of Children and Youth from Sexual Offenses was passed, which establishes new penalties for crimes involving threats or coercion using sexual exploitation materials against children and youth, and allows for emergency anonymous investigations by the police. Other bills passed include an amendment to the Gender Equality in Employment and Work-Family Balance Support Act, which extends the parental leave period to 3 years and the paternity leave to 20 years, as well as
20 days, right?
20 days, yes. Sorry about that. 20 days, as well as the Child Support Enforcement Act, which introduces the advanced child support payment system where the state first pays child support to single-parent families and later collects it from the non-custodial parent. An amendment to the Labor Standards Act introducing punitive damages for employers who repeatedly delay wage payments, and an amendment to the Capital Market and Financial Investment Services Act applying the same trading conditions for short selling between individuals and institutions were also approved. Out of the 90 agenda items presented at the plenary session, 77 bills were passed in total.
Yeah, this one's quite interesting because a lot of the livelihood bills that were passed on Thursday, there were issues regarding issues that's been long-standing in the Korean society. But at the same time, you have something like the deepfake bill, which... If you look at some of the reports that have been coming out, deepfake sex crimes have been a thing for some time now, for several years now. At least I believe the last, they had the numbers up until from 2019, I believe, might be the earliest one, or 18, something around that. It's only been a few years, but the numbers were very, very small. If you look at recent numbers, especially this year, I believe we're not even at the end of the year right now, but the number of deepfake sex crimes has thwarted the amount of crimes committed last year.
Right. And that's not all, I guess. There are so many cases that have not been revealed.
Yeah.
So I actually wanted to mention this specific law, especially because recently I saw a lot of my friends that have kids, especially daughters, on Instagram or other social media, they would put kind of smileys or emoticons on their kids' faces.
To cover it up.
To cover their faces. And I just thought it's for privacy. But I found out that in many cases it's because they're afraid of these deep fake, these kinds of crimes. That is why they are afraid to put their child's picture on online, because those pictures could be used for criminal reasons.
Yeah, and so the scary thing about that is that when we think about like deep fake sex crimes, we think about all these like fake pornographic videos that people have been creating using the faces, but that's not the only deep fake crimes that can be take place. They can easily take the face of your child and manipulate it to the point where it looks like you have like a video going like, oh, mom, daddy, I've been kidnapped. I need money.
Right.
They'll release me if they send me money and things like that. And so it's things like this. And I kid you not, it's so realistic. As a parent, you're not going to think this must be deep fake. Right. And so I heard that there's a lot of people who have been losing money in regards to this, which is why I believe I mentioned this a couple of months ago, but like if you guys use WhatsApp, and I use this just for talking to people overseas, but there's been unknown numbers from like different countries. They're calling you on the video phone and they're saying do not pick it up because as soon as you pick up the video phone, they'll capture your face and you saying hello, so you get your voice, and they'll use that to manipulate it for voice phishing.
It just
and
takes
so
a
forth.
few words to make your voice, to duplicate your voice.
Oh, absolutely. And so because this is becoming a big thing and is spreading way too quickly, it's been passed this quickly at the National Assembly, as opposed to the other bills where it took years and years and years. And it is good to see that we have some sort of bipartisan support in regards to this. Just a little over 2 months left until the by-election set for...
Sorry, 2 weeks.
2 weeks set, sorry, check that, for the October 16th by-elections. Today, this Friday, the candidate registrations came to a close. So how are the rival parties getting ready for this mini by-elections?
Well, the lineup is complete. Candidate registration ran Thursday and Friday for the October 16th mini by-elections, as they are dubbed. 4 mayoral posts for administrative districts need to be filled. So first off, in the southern city of Busan, the Kumjeong district, and then in Incheon, Gangwon County, in Jeollanam-do province, Yeonggwang and Gokseong counties each. Here in Seoul, voters will also choose a superintendent at the Seoul Metropolitan Office of Education. Now, although these are mini elections, they are the first elections that are seen as a true gauge of public sentiment following the April general elections. Both ruling and opposition parties are also competing their first elections under a new leadership, or kind of new leadership. Han Dong-hoon as the ruling People Power Party's new leader, but of course who was the interim leader throughout the parliamentary elections, and Lee Jae-myung of the main opposition Democratic Party, for whom it's the first election of a second term as party leader. So whichever party loses in the by-elections, it's expected to suffer some degree of political damage, especially if it's a loss by a larger margin than predicted. And that's also why both party leaders will be supporting their party candidates in the campaign leading up to the October voting. So let me give you the names of the candidates here. For the Kumjeong district in Busan, ruling PPP Yoon Il-hyun will be running, and then main opposition DP's Kim Kyung-ji, and minor Rebuilding Korea parties Ryu Jae-sung. And then in Gangwon County in Incheon, it's PPP's Park Yong-chol, DP's Han Yeon-hee, and then we have an independent candidate An Sang-soo and Kim Byung-yeon. Also in Gokseong County in Jeollanam-do province again, there's going to be a 4-way race with PPP Representative Choi Bong-lee, DP's Jo Sang-rae, and Rebuilding Korea parties Park Ung-do, as well as independent candidate Lee Lee-Sung-no. Last but not least, in Yeonggwang County in Jeollanam-do Province, it's the DP's Jang Se-il, Rebuilding Korea Party's Jang Hyun, and minor progressive Jimbo Party's Lee Seok-ha, and independent candidate Kim Ki-yeol, also independent candidate Oh Ki-won. So as you can see, the PPP is not represented in Yeonggwang, and we know that Jeollanam-do Province itself is a stronghold of the current opposition.
Yeah, and so this is quite interesting because, like you said, I mean, for the Jeolla regions, it's going to be DP, right? I mean, and no matter what, it's going to be DP.
DP or, probably DP.
It is probably, no, it's going to be DP. Yeah, I know you're probably going like, well, maybe one of the minor parties too, but no, it's going to be DP. It's always been kind of that case. Probably the Busan... Busan is traditionally the ruling conservative stronghold there, so that's not going to be too much of a surprise. What's going to be quite interesting maybe is Ganghwa County in Incheon, although it does tend to lean more towards the ruling conservative PPP. We'll have to see what happens because currently if you look at the approval rating, not for President Yoon, but for the parties involved. It used to be that the PPP, despite the fact that President Yoon's approval rating was sinking down to even the 20s, at least the ruling PPP was enjoying a much higher approval rating over the DP. That's actually switched right now. It's flipped. And so we don't know what's going to happen in, let's say, the Ganghwa regions. Koksang, that's still Jeollanam-do, right? And so that's going to be probably DP. But we'll see what happens. Tell us about the respective parties' plans, though, in winning the elections.
Yes, so PPP chairman Han Dong-hoon visited Incheon, Ganghwa this Friday. Tomorrow he will be in Kumjong, Busan, and on the 8th of October in Jeollanam-do Koksang. So it's expected to be a rather subdued election campaign for the ruling party, they say. PPP leader Han is expected to travel to these election areas once or twice upon local request. And then when it comes to DP leader Lee Jae-myung, he called for support in Yeonggwang and Koksang already on the 23rd and 24th. And the atmosphere actually among the opposition is a little different as there is tension among the opposition parties. The DP and Rebuilding Korea Party are fighting over the Honam region. So as Jerry mentioned, it's probably going to be the DP winning, but the minor parties also kind of want to have their candidate in the race. So they are kind of quarreling over having to choose a single candidate so that they can actually win by a bigger margin.
You know, I want to take back that statement I made with for Jeolla region,
region?
DP, because I'm looking at Real Meter results right now. This was taken from, let's see, this was September 10th to 11th, so it's been a while, but still. Right now, DP's Jang Se-il, 29.8%.
Only.
Rebuilding Korea Party, Jang Hyun, 30.3%.
Wow.
So it's very, very close. It's only 0.5 percentage points. However, still though, considering, I mean, so I guess we just don't know, right? I mean, I think there has been some people who have not been too happy with the main opposition Democratic Party, and so they'll lean towards the other Liberal Party, right?
Exactly. So that is why in Busan's conservative Kumjong district, for instance, the two parties, the opposition parties, are in conflict over choosing a single candidate, as no one wants to give up their candidacy. And then again in Jeollanam-do, but in the Jeolla region, they won't have to choose a single candidate probably because the ruling PPP is very not strong in that area. But now that candidate registration has come to a close, early voting will take place on October 11th and 12th before the actual election day, the 16th.
All right, we'll see what happens. Let's move on. Despite opposition to the expansion of the medical school admissions quota, 34.5% of resident doctors who've resigned have found re-employment in medical institutions. However, very few of those resigned residents have returned to the tertiary hospitals where they were originally training. Hannah, let's get more on this.
Sure. Now, as of September 19th, data shows that 34.5% of the 9,016 residents resident doctors who resigned or declined appointments have been reemployed as doctors. By type of institution, 1,719 resigned residents, or 55.2% of those reemployed, have taken jobs at private clinics, making this the largest group. And in terms of medical specialty, the highest number of resigned residents have been re-employed at general clinics. Internal medicine followed with 219, orthopedics with 172, ENT, ear, nose, and throat with 148, and so on. Now, this contrasts with the high resignation rates in essential medical specialties such as OBGYN, thoracic surgery, neurosurgery, and pediatrics. And for example, only 48 resigned residents found jobs in OBGYN clinics, 32 in neurosurgery, 22 in pediatrics, and just 4 in cardiovascular and thoracic surgery. A total of 829 resigned residents, or 26.6% of those reemployed, took positions at hospitals. However, 236 of them found jobs at long-term care hospitals and 29 at traditional Korean medicine hospitals, meaning that they are not working in hospitals that typically treat critically ill patients. Only 52 resigned residents, a mere 1.7% of those reemployed, returned to tertiary hospitals, which are represented training hospitals for residents, and another 514 were reemployed at general hospitals. Now, 6 resigned residents have opened their own practices, 1 at a long-term care hospital and 5 at private clinics. Experts are emphasizing the need for a realistic solution to this issue, urging that measures be put in place to help resigned residents complete their training and obtain specialist qualifications in essential medical fields like critical care, emergency medicine, and rare diseases, as well as in primary care for local communities.
Yeah, so what we're seeing right now, and I've noticed this at my local clinics too, there's an ENT that I tend to go often. Well, not so much so because, I have a young kid who goes to daycare and he catches everything that's going around there. And so every time we're going to the ENT, because there's a huge shortage of doctors in these major hospitals, these smaller minor clinics are opening 7 days now. Usually these local clinics are only open for 5.5 days. 5.5 days, and that Saturday is just half day. But now they're open 7 days. And I noticed that they've also hired more doctors. And I said, where in the world did they get these doctors? Well, it's the trainee doctors that basically resigned from the university hospitals and so forth. And so they're working there because it's been, 7 months now. Right? Almost 7 months. We're quickly approaching the 7-month mark right now. And there's no way you cannot be working for 7 months and start, worrying about the bills and stuff like that. And so this is what's happening. But the most important thing is they need to get back because it's really the critical ill patients that are struggling right now. In emergency rooms, there's still a big issues in regards to this. Speaking of which, the Health Ministry on Friday announcing its plans for restructuring the tertiary care general hospitals. This includes an investment of some 3.3 trillion won, or $2.5 billion US annually over the next 5 years. So let's get the details of this.
Sure. Apart from the increase in the medical school admissions quota, the government has a number of other changes in mind regarding its health reform plan. So the final draft on restructuring tertiary care general hospitals has been finalized this Friday, according to Jung Kyung-sil, who heads the Healthcare Reform Committee under the Health Ministry. The gist of the plan is to allow these general hospitals to reduce the overall size of their practices and focus on emergency and critical care in a bid to maintain their current size of staff while making operations more effective by adjusting the roles of the staff. Interior Minister Lee Sang-min at a government meeting on the continuous medical walkout said, quote, "The workforce structure at top-tier general hospitals will be reorganized around medical specialists and physician assistant nurses. Instead, there will inevitably be a reduction of focus on patients with less severe conditions, so hospital beds for those will be reduced by 5 to 15%. Now, by the way, the Interior Ministry also is involved here, not only the Health Ministry, as it is about restructuring medical facilities.
And safety.
Exactly. And as mentioned in the lead, SJ, the government, in an aim to reform tertiary care hospitals to support the prioritization of dealing with emergency patients or treating critically ill patients, is planning to invest 3.3 trillion won, or roughly $2.5 billion, from its health insurance funding every year over the next 5 years. And this is in addition to the existing investment of more than 10 trillion won of health insurance funding by 2028. The government's health reform plan is to cost the government a total of 20 trillion won, according to the Interior Minister. He added that without raising the number of doctors that are in short supply, it's going to be difficult to secure the medical workforce that's needed to normalize medical services in all forms.
Yeah, the problem right now is, the ultimate goal, and we mentioned this before, the ultimate goal was to add more doctors to this country right now. However, because of this push and the doctors and their collective actions, and not just the doctors, but the med school students, right? The med school students are still boycotting their classes. And so if they're not going to the classes, if not they're not taking the exams, there are no doctors. Is the problem right now. And so is this just a short-term solution to what we have right now? Because ultimately the solution is to have the doctors at the hospitals is what it is. And whatever funding that you put into it may not be a long-term plan here. And so they need to do something. And yet we have all these plans in place. The government's trying to do this, fill the holes right now, but the doctors are refusing to hold talks right now without having to scrap the 2020, the admissions quota hike for the 2025 academic year. It's getting ridiculous right now. Really is. We have to get them back into the negotiating table once again. Let's move on here. Let's talk about what's going on over in Japan. The successor to Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida has been decided Friday. The ruling Liberal Democratic Party elected a new party president for a 3-year term. Now, in Japan's parliamentary system, the leader of the ruling party, which holds the majority, becomes the prime minister. This, of course, with parliamentary approval, which goes through anyways. Hannah, let's get the latest on this.
Sure. Now, this election has attracted the highest number of candidates, 9 candidates, since the current candidacy system was introduced in 1972 in Japan. The lack of internal coordination within party factions, which have been dissolving, has led to multiple candidates from the same factions running. Now, Shigeru Ishiba, the former Secretary General of Japan's Liberal Democratic Party, known for his relatively moderate stance on historical issues between Japan and South Korea, has been elected as Japan's next prime minister, or soon to be next prime minister. Now, on the 27th, the LDP held a leadership election at its headquarters in Tokyo, where Ishiba was elected as the party's 28th president. And in the runoff vote, Ishiba secured 215 votes, defeating Sanae Takaichi, the Minister for Economic Security, who received 194 votes, winning by a margin of 21 votes. Although Ishiba trailed in the first round of voting, receiving 154 votes to Takaichi's 181, he pulled off a dramatic comeback in the runoff. The new LDP president elected is expected to be officially appointed as the next prime minister on October 1st, succeeding Kishida.
It's interesting. So you have the former defense minister Ishiba, who was voted, and Sanae Takaichi was the one that lost in the runoff vote, yet Takaichi was the economic security minister, and you kind of think about the current situation right now, what's happening in Japan, you would think that they would lean more towards the Takaichi, but that's not the case here. For our listeners out there, next week we will connect over in live over in Japan, get our Japanese correspondent to fill us in on who Ishiba is, and of course how the elections, the voting took place, and get more on the situation over there. We're going to stay in Japan. The country has started its 9th round of releasing nuclear-contaminated wastewater from the crippled Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant to the Pacific Ocean. South Korea's ambassador to Japan visited the site and once again called on Tokyo to make sure that its process is transparent. Transparency is what we've been seeking out. So I'll fill us in on this.
Right. Japanese media on Thursday reported that Tokyo Electric Power Company, the operator of the Fukushima nuclear power plant, has commenced its 9th round of discharging treated wastewater into the ocean from the tsunami-hit Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant. Just like during the previous releases, around 7,800 tons are to be dumped into the waters until October 13th, according to Kyodo News Agency. TEPCO was cited as saying the samples taken from the tanks were analyzed and found that the concentration of radioactive substances such as tritium was below the standard. Japan started discharging contaminated water into the Pacific Ocean on August 24th last year, and by last month, some 62,600 tons in total. In fiscal 2024, TEPCO is predicted to discharge a total of 54,600 tons of wastewater in 7 rounds, which contains roughly 14 trillion becquerels of tritium. Meanwhile, South Korea's ambassador to Japan, Park Cheol-i, on Thursday made a visit to the reactor where he was briefed by TEPCO on the procedures for discharging the contaminated water into the ocean, as well as the decommissioning of the accidental reactor. Park, according to Seoul's embassy, reiterated South Korea's concerns and stance on the discharge. He stressed the importance of conducting the release in a safe manner according to international standards, and also the importance of providing information on the process in a transparent way.
So it's interesting because I have been following the data from Fukushima Daiichi Austrian water discharge. I had it bookmarked. Who got rid of my bookmark on the website here? I found it already. And so what we look at is the tritium concentration after dilution. That's the big one, right? And so it's at 418 becquerels per liter, which is still below the 1/40th of the regulatory standards of tritium in Japan, according to this. However, if memory serves me correct, this number is actually far higher right now than what it was when they initially sent this off. And so what they're trying to be, Japan is trying to keep this less than 1,500 becquerels per liter. It's already at nearing about 1/5, less than 1/5. What is it? No, 1/3. 1/3, a little bit less than 1/3 right now. So whether or not this number continues to go up is the big thing. But so far, all the green lights are on right now, and it's still far below the standards. And so as long as we get the transparent numbers like this, we're good to go. Let's move on to something quite interesting here. Speaking of Japan, South Korea and Japan, they're holding a meeting to discuss the joint development of the Block 7 in the East China Sea, which may contain reserves of oil, natural gas, and minerals. This is the first meeting in 39 years. Though both countries signed an agreement back in 1974 to jointly develop or a joint project on the Block 7 area, little progress was made due to Japan's passive attitude. As the agreement now approaches a critical juncture, the outcome of the discussion is drawing significant attention. Hannah, tell us more about this.
Sure. Now, the two countries will convene the 6th Joint Committee meeting on Friday in Tokyo to discuss the implementation of the agreement, according to South Korean Ministry of Foreign Affairs. This meeting is being held ahead of the impending expiration of the agreement, which provides the legal basis for the joint development of Block 7. Now, Block 7 is located south of Jeju Island and has been considered a potential oil reserve, once fueling hopes of South Korea becoming an oil-producing country. In 1974, South Korea and Japan signed an agreement to jointly develop Block 7 and the adjacent area south of Jeju Island, covering a total area of 82,557 square kilometers. The agreement came into effect in June 1978 with a 50-year validity period set to expire in June 2028. However, either country can declare the termination of the agreement starting 3 years prior to the expiration date, meaning that after June 2024, the continuation of the agreement is uncertain. Now, many observers believe Japan wishes to terminate the agreement given its past behavior. After two joint exploration efforts between 1978 and 1987, and again in 2002, failed to discover economically viable oil fields, Japan stopped designating designated new exploration rights holders, effectively withdrawing from the joint development project. Now, despite South Korea's repeated request, the Joint Committee has not met since the fifth session in 1985. Japan's shift to a more passive approach, in contrast to its initial enthusiasm, is believed to be due to a change in the criteria for determining continental shelf boundaries in 1985 by the International Court of Justice, which was seen as favorable to Japan. Some speculate that Japan might be aiming to terminate the agreement in order to renegotiate or pursue independent development. On the other hand, South Korea reportedly favors extending the agreement and conducting additional joint explorations to verify the economic viability of Block 7. Now, the upcoming Sixth Joint Committee meeting may serve as a platform for both sides to exchange their positions on these matters.
As of about an hour ago, the meeting did actually just take place, but we're also getting some interesting reports coming out in regards to the content of this right now. I'm trying to figure out what they're trying to say. The negotiations has been going on, right? It stopped for like 39 years. And they're saying that right now, this meeting itself is very preliminary. So there's not going to be any sort of concrete solutions to what they're going to be doing just on this single meeting now. And so we'll have to see what other details do come out in regards to this. But just about less than an hour ago, we're getting the news that this meeting between the two sides have kicked off. Let's go over to Berlin. Soa's hometown. I didn't know you're from Berlin. Really?
I am.
I know you're from Germany. I didn't know Berlin was your hometown. This is where we talked about with a number of actually people in regards to this, the so-called comfort woman statue, or the Statue of Peace, as we call it, is in danger of being removed. We talked about, I think it was like last week or a couple of weeks ago, a resolution that was passed at the Berlin Mitte District Council. However, it's not binding. There's still the question of whether or not it is going to be removed. So we hear that negotiations are still going on, but compromise does not seem to be near. Tell us more about this.
Yes, we talked about the Comfort Woman statue, which represents and remembers the women that were forced into sexual slavery by Japan during war times. And also lots of comfort women statues around the world, but also a number of them endangered of being removed. Now, one of the statues stands in the Mitte district in central Berlin since October 2020, and the Korea Verband, a nonprofit organization that focuses on educating human rights, Korean culture, as well as Korea-German ties, had installed it back then. But citing an expiration of the right to keep the statue there, Berlin City is calling on the removal, and pressure from Japan is said to be one of the reasons. I believe just recently, the mayor of Berlin also had a trip to Japan, and because Berlin and I think it was San Francisco, they are kind of a sister city, and they had talks to, improve their relations even further and so forth. And then at that timing, we're hearing this, that the statue has to be removed. Now, officials and activists are in negotiations trying to find a compromise. There is the possibility of the statue to be moved to another place, so not really taken away, but then moved to another place. But there are difficulties in choosing the right spot. The Korea Verband is calling on a public space for the new spot, and also it should not be on land owned by a specific group, such as religious groups. There's also the question regarding a museum on the Comfort Women nearby the statue, so whether both should be moved together or not, and they are hoping that if they are both moved, they should be within 500-meter vicinity. The organization said that if a location is chosen, they could move the statue within a month and the museum within a year, but the costs should be covered by the city, is what the activists request. The city's government, however, has warned to just tear down the statue if it is not taken to a new place within 4 weeks. Now, Korea Verband has sent a letter to Berlin Mitte's district office on Wednesday, suggesting that the district office select up to 5 alternative sites from among public land within its jurisdiction and discuss the specific relocation. And it called on an answer until October 10th. With no agreement, the group plans to sue the city and enter legal proceedings.
Berlin Mitte District Mayor Stephanie Remlinger was her name. I remember she came out saying that she does not want it to be removed. However, one of the options would be that it be moved to a private location, is what she said. And so then, I mean, if it's a private location, then like, what's the whole point of this? It's like, why don't
Nobody
you just...
can approach it.
Yeah, like what's they said if it's a private location that can be accessible, is what she said. That's kind of like private location, my house. Let's keep it at my house and we'll let everybody. It doesn't work that way, right? The whole point of this was that it was in a public open space that anybody can just simply go. And this is becoming a problem right now. We'll see. This is not going to be the last of this. So are you doing some research on it?
Yeah, just about the mayor, because I thought it was a male mayor.
Not the Berlin mayor, the Mitte district.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah.
The
Mitte
county
district.
mayor.
Yeah. This is separate. Not Berlin mayor, but the Mitte district mayor. Apparently they call it mayor too.
I guess I was too sensitive about my hometown, that's why.
Yes. State of emergency has been declared in the metropolitan areas of Lima, Peru, following a surge in violent crimes, including kidnapping of a Korean businessman and a murder of a local public transportation driver. Hannah, shocking stuff here. Tell us more about this.
Excuse me. Now, on Thursday, local time, Peruvian Prime Minister Arirang announced during a press conference on the government's official YouTube channel, a state of emergency will be in effect for 60 days starting today in 12 districts within the Lima metropolitan area and in Callao. The military and police will strengthen internal security measures, is what he said. Now, the district of Independencia, where local police dramatically rescued a kidnapped Korean businessman from 3 Venezuelan gang members the previous day, is among the areas affected by this measure. And in recent times, violent crimes such as murder, robbery, and extortion have been rapidly increasing, particularly in Lima. A series of violent crimes targeting public transportation workers, including bus and taxi drivers, has also occurred. So on September 22nd, a bus driver was killed while resisting an attack, bringing the number of public transportation drivers murdered in the city to 4 within just over a month. Since the 23rd, transportation union members and citizens have been staging protests and strikes, demanding better personal safety measures. And in response, the government has implemented various measures, including temporary school closures and encouraging remote work for office employees. And declaration of the state of emergency is also seen as part of the Peruvian government's effort to strengthen security ahead of the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation, or APEC, summit scheduled for November.
All right, there you have it. We'll keep a close tab on the issue here, and hopefully this doesn't explode into something bigger moving forward. Guys, I want to thank you very much for coming in for today's reports. Have a safe weekend, and we'll see you guys again next time.
Thank you.
You can listen to Korea Now with me, SJ Lee, by downloading the Arirang Radio application, or tune in online by visiting www.arirangradio.com. So make sure you tune in Mondays through Fridays, 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. Korea time.